everybody, it's Sarah, and this is my first Booktube video. So I'm joining the Booktube hashtag and community. Don't know why it's taken me so long to get involved here, but I have been on other platforms for a while and taking lots of shelfies, I would say, like pictures of me with books for a number of years. And so I'm just happy to have found Booktube, because I am now starting to revive my YouTube channel. So I'm going to answer some questions about the newbie questions for a newbie booktuber person, which is, I guess, is me. So I am a former junior high teacher of 16-17 years, which is where my reading life really began. In high school, I didn't read very much because the teachers never asked me. They never asked me what I thought of any of the books. They didn't. Once I realized that they didn't want to engage in discussion with me or find out what I was thinking or what was happening in my heart and my mind when we were reading books in school, I realized they just wanted a summary that I could copy from the back of the book, and I never really found my way into loving and just uncovering what a book can do for me. And once I became a teacher, I knew that it was really important for me to read the books, obviously, that my students would be reading and to help them revive their reading life. And so I had a young adult literature class in my graduate program, and that's where I fell in love with reading again, because it was, or for the first time, I should say, for the first time. I was in graduate school the first time I really fell in love with reading, and it was with young adult literature. And I took an independent study course to read only young adult literature written by Mexican-American authors, because I was starting my teaching job in a predominantly Mexican-American community, and I wanted to know the books and read the books and make sure that my library had an ample section of books that represented their lives, in addition to books that had what Rudine Simmons Bishop says, like windows and mirrors and sliding glass doors, to all different parts of our world, imagined and unimagined yet, right? So futures, just futures as well, and science fiction and things like that. And what was so great about being a junior high teacher is that my students were the ones that got me to read books way beyond my interest. I really loved realistic fiction, contemporary fiction so much, and students loved fantasy and science fiction, and that's where I learned about Redwall series, that was I was like, these books are way too long, how are you reading them? But I found a way of appreciating the Redwall series and reading those with my students. So that's where my book love began, is with teaching junior high. And then I met this wonderful educator named, named Donalyn Miller, of course, and she wrote this great book called The Book Whisperer, and it was really revolutionary to think about how our schools can just really be about giving students choice in their reading lives. And I love that, and I applied for a grant and got all these wonderful young adult literature books for my classroom, and filled my classroom with the books, and the curriculum became whatever the students wanted to read. And we partnered with our librarian, and we just were reading a ton. And that first summer, Donalyn Miller had this book a day challenge, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. So I started reading a book a day, and I was sharing it on Facebook and taking pictures of this, and it was fantastic. But I went a little overboard, which is what I do a lot, and I read a book a day for the next 3 or 4 years. So I was reading a ton. And what happened to me, so I've talked about myself, my genres, some of my books that I love. What sort of happened to me in my reading life is I went back to school to work on my PhD while I was still teaching junior high, and I started reading a lot of genocide literature, in part because there's this mandate in schools in Illinois at the time to teach about genocide in our classrooms, and in the English language arts classroom, which was mine, we were trying to find out ways that we could integrate stories, fiction and nonfiction, about these historical accounts, but I just was unfamiliar with them, and I didn't really know how to read them very well without traumatizing students with the literature, and which authors we could trust to, again, move our hearts and minds without traumatizing us as we were like learning about these unimaginable things. So I started reading a ton of literature related to genocide studies, and that's where I really just like learned about historical fiction, and I read a ton of historical fiction. And Tree Girl was one of the first books, and it was about the Guatemalan genocide by Ben Michelson. That was it was written in the early 2000s. The genocide happened in the early 80s. It was a really raw, powerful story written for middle schoolers, but there were some scenes in there that were just unimaginable, and also it wasn't written firsthand by someone from Guatemala. It was written by this white author, Ben Michelson, who did a pretty good job, but it made me think about like who's writing the books that I'm reading, and if I'm diversifying the authors as much as I'm diversifying the book. So, you know, reading a lot, but also like so conscious about what I was reading. And that went on for a long time. And I started launching, collaborating with colleagues about having a young adult literature summit where we talk about the teaching of these books and the reading of these books, of a range of books, and all of that. I was just reading so much and teaching young adult literature courses. And then lately I've just dropped off a little bit of it because I've been focusing so much on writing, and I've been focusing on writing poetry and working with teachers in writing poetry, because so much of our school curriculum has been focused on reading, reading literature and reading verse novels and reading poetry, but not in writing. So the last few years I've fallen off from my book reading and my, you know, just cuddling up with the book in the margins of the day and spending my Saturdays reading. Like, I have abandoned doing those things because I've had these other projects that I've been doing. And so now I feel like I'm ready to get back into my reading life and to revive it again. And so my hope with this Booktube channel is to share the new young adult literature that I'm reading, and predominantly to start thinking about short form young adult literature, and the books that are creating have anthologies and collections and things like that. And I don't know if this is like, are you like anti short form literature, or does it have to be those like super thick books? Like, I see a lot of like full length books, which I think are really great, but can't our Booktube channel also include anthologies and some short form literature and some poetry books and things like that? Or does it have to be a novel? Like, I don't think it has to be a novel. So here I am thinking like reviving this with some short form literature, and I want to share some of that over the next month or so, the things that I've been reading and what I'm loving and the authors that I'm really like interested in, and this has been like blowing my mind as I've been working on this project of sort of collecting short form literature. Okay, so I talked about my goals. This is my Booktube goal, is to like revive my life. Maybe it would be interesting to you, but also start following other booktubers to find out how they're keeping their reading life alive. Do I have any book recommendations for someone new and to my favorite genre, which is sort of short form literature and poetry that's related to young adult literature? Okay, so I do have some. All right. So first of all, I know this is a shameless plug, but I want to tell you about this book. This book is Alone Together. I don't know if you're seeing this or if it's mirrored or not, but Alone Together is actually a book that I wrote in verse a couple years ago, and this is really what got me more writing poetry and writing young adult literature, and curious about short form stories and ways that we can tell stories in a collection of short pieces like verse novels. And I had to experiment with it to kind of understand how the short verse novels are constructed. And so I really enjoyed writing this novel, and it's about Sadie, who grows up in a really big family and wants to just assert herself and get out of the family and get out of the crazy house, and start her own life. You know, she's like in high school but is about to graduate, and she's ready to leave this big family. But trauma after trauma keeps happening, where she feels pulled back in and needed to help her sisters and to help her father. And then, of course, there's a couple love lines, and it becomes a little bit complicated because there's like two boys that are really interested in Sadie as she's trying to navigate who she wants to be as sort of like a feminist, independent person, and also the feelings that she's having for these two different boys who are both really lovely. And I loved writing that too, because I loved writing like a nice, romantic, intimate scenes without it being too graphic, and just recognizing that youth have some decisions that they make, and it's okay for youth to like intimacy, in a healthy way. So I wrote a little bit about that. So this is one of the books. One of the other short forms that I love, and that this is from incredible young adult authors. This is called Rhyme and Rhythm, Poems for Student Athletes. Now, I don't know how many booktubers out there are athletes or have athletes in their life, but I found that when I was a teacher, that it was really hard to find short form literature that celebrated or considered sports and the role of sports in school. And it was like, even from gym class, that you hate gym class, or you're not an athlete, or you don't feel like you don't belong in certain things, but maybe you love doing other things like going for a walk or ice skating or something that doesn't have to be competitive. Like, it's still, we're using our bodies, it's embodied practice and stuff. So I love this collection of poems from some of our great authors like Gay Polisner, young adult authors, and Padma Venkatraman, and Nikki Grimes, and Zetta Elliott, and there's just like, this one is by Padma, and it has some like great pictures in there. But it's a collection of poems. It is a book. I think it counts as a bookstagram, and this is like a really fantastic one. And the other one that has just coming out that I want to like celebrate throughout this month is Just YA, and this is a collection of short poems, short creative nonfiction essays, and short fiction pieces, again by acclaimed young adult authors and fiction writers, flash fiction writers. So this is really great for me because I'm a busy professor at a university, and I teach and I do research, and I need like short pieces that I can like read for a little bit before I go to bed, that aren't going to be ones that I need to like, I get so captivated in that I can't close the book. So I love that, and then I also like recommending it for teachers to use in their classrooms so they can infuse short form literature in their classes, and then like hook students to read more by that author. So if you like read the poem in here from Valerie Hunter, and then you realize, oh, I can find her other pieces of writing, and then like fall in love with her work. Same with like Padma Venkatraman and Chris Crow and Christopher Hartley Lenz, and oh my gosh, so many wonderful people. Jennifer Goyer-Jawet, like they all have like middle grade novels and young adult novels that you could read. So those are some of my favorites to start with, if you want to try out any of those. So my challenge and my tag, is going to be Just YA, hashtag Just YA, and hashtag Ethical ELA. Those are my two tags for this. And my challenge is to post something from some of these short pieces from Just YA over the next month. And I am anticipating my next book haul. I should be receiving that soon, and as soon as I do that, I will unbox that and I will share that with you as well. So, pet peeves. Do I have any pet peeves? I don't know. Sometimes the really long books are a little bit of a pet peeve for me. I get really frustrated. It's too many pages. It hurts my hands to read them. I don't know. It's a terrible habit. But those really long books, I love short books that I can sit down and spend a couple hours in and feel like accomplished, and feel like I lived in their world for a little bit, and then I'm ready to rejoin my other world. So super long books are not always good for me. Sorry. I like short forms. And I think that's all. So I hope that you join me on my journey of exploring short form young adult literature, and I look forward to following you. So if you comment and give me your link or tag or handle or whatever that is, I can start following you too and see the books that you're reading. Until next time.